I had this dream that all those hills had been leveled, the houses torn down. I saw it in my dream. And exactly the way I saw it, that's the way it happened.
It's the tragedy of my life. Absolutely. I was responsible for uprooting, I don't know how many hundreds of people from their own little valley and having the whole thing destroyed.
It's sort of taken on a mythical sense in people's memories, and then with the feeling that it was unfairly taken from them. So it's no wonder that people have strong feelings about it.
He said, please, your son's in a baseball team. Let's go to the Dodgers as a family. I'll never go again. I hated it. I didn't enjoy it. It was like dancing on a grave.
1962. In Chavez Ravine, a few miles from downtown Los Angeles, baseball fans crowd the bleachers of the brand new Dodger Stadium to welcome their team from Brooklyn. The stadium sits on 170 acres of freshly cleared land that just 12 years earlier was home to over 300 families. The neighborhoods of La Loma, Palo Verde, and Bishop, the neighborhoods of Chavez Ravine.
Me, myself, I loved it there. I loved it because we used to run up and down the hills, and we knew every little trail around there in the neighborhood. I don't think anybody want to move out of your neighborhood when you've been living there so long and you know everybody like a big family.
Elysian Park was our playground. You know, the whole park was right next to it. We used to go down there and swim naked in the LA River. We used to make dams, you know, with rocks, you know, make holes and then swim in that dirty water.
We won a lot of trophies there in the Legion Park. Believe me, we did. Football, you name it, baseball, basketball. We were good. We would get to the playground, who play the opponents. They would come up with their brand new uniforms, and here we look like those goddamn East Side kids, you know, raggedy-ass kids playing baseball. That other team, you know, they said, how could these guys beat us?
There were great times for me, beautiful time. Yeah. The processions, the lighted candle. The men would dress like Roman soldiers. They had this big drum, boom, boom, boom. We would go through the hills.
It was unbelievable when I seen all these pictures. I was really surprised. And I never seen anybody with a camera. Who would take these pictures? Nobody would go up the hill and take pictures, and nobody could afford a camera.
I was looking for a kind of a postcard view of the Los Angeles. I had a friend who had a car, and we drove around looking and found this hill and walked up the hill. And but then I looked down the other side of that hill I was standing on, and there was this community below me. It looked like a village, dirt roads and houses going up the roads and people walking around.
The hill still exists right there. You can see it up the top.
Yeah. So I was up there, someplace when I took the shot.
Yeah, he was up on Pine Street, the Yola Drive.
I made photographs in '48 and most of them in 1949, and I had very little luck in showing them or getting anybody to even look at them.
Years later, Don found a publisher who thought his photograph should be a book. And for the first time, they were seen by the people of Chavez Ravine.
Got a card table, a couple of chairs with a box full of photographs from 1949. And a crowd formed around and people were exclaiming and some burst into tears. And it was quite marvelous. It was quite grand.
Oh, every time I see that book, I feel like crying. Like I could see the house where I was born. Like my daughter was born there. My daughter was born, my wife was born there. When I was a kid, I used to build model airplanes, kites, and I used to fly way on top of that hill. It was so clear. Many years back, you could see Playa del Rey, Santa Monica, and San Pedro. Just the City Hall was the tallest building. And it was very nice up here. To me, it was just like a little ranch.
My grandchildren, I'll take them up there for a ride. He says, Dad, was he born up here? He says, yeah. And they see the pictures on the book. He says, Jesus, those poor kids, huh? He says, yeah, that's the way it was in those days, you know. And barefooted and hand-me-down clothes and books and what have you. But you know what? We were happy. We were happy people.
We used to make like sleds out of
Cardboard boxes.
From Kelvinator or Gaffers and Sadler, with the stoves or whatever came in.
And just slide down. It was like a toboggan, except it was grass.
About 20 minutes to get up there again. That was our recreation.
When I see now these pictures, and I was excited about seeing them, but then I was kind of mad, resentful about what happened when we had to move out.
In July 1950, the city of Los Angeles sent letters to the residents of Chavez Ravine, notifying them that they would have to sell their homes to make way for low-income public housing. Frank Wilkinson of the City Housing Authority led the project.
Our city was the first city in the nation to get the first $110 billion in today's money for public housing in LA, where we were going to build 10,000 units. And Chavez Ravine was one of the prime places we found simply because it was predominantly vacant, so you could build without displacing so many people.
It was something that really hit them hard, you know. Something like that happened. I mean, it's when they're gonna throw you out. They were forcing us out, really.
And they would tell us, if you don't sell, we're gonna condemn your property. You won't get anything out of it. So that scared us, a lot of people there.
The Housing Authority, as a public entity, has the right to buy your home. They'll pay you a fair market value, and then you are required to sell. That's the power that we had. And I prepared a certificate to every family that I visited there, and I visited all those people, saying when the project is built, you and your family will be the first priority to get there. You can pick the part of the project you want to live in.
That never happened. They never built anything like that. They just went ahead and built the Dodger Stadium.
And Richard Nitra and Robert Alexander were picked as the architects for the site, and they worked for months designing, writing, doing beautiful plans. We had playgrounds, church, school, everything. We were completely idealistic, feeling that what we were offering was good for the city of LA, but good for the people who were being displaced.
We were going to have first crack at moving into those projects. Now, if you could imagine 100 acres of lush, green, beautiful hills and a handful of Mexicans living there with vegetable gardens and a few pigs and goats and a little church and, you know, being all condensed in a little postage-size tenement, it just doesn't make any sense. It simply doesn't wash. We were ripped off.
My dad made a mistake. You know, the guys from the city came and knocked on the door, and they offered him $9,600. So my dad said, wow, you know, I really made some money, you know, I made a killing. That's what he thought. So when we moved out of there, and my dad had to buy another house, they were $9,600. They were $15,000, $17,000, $18,000.
They didn't want to move. They didn't want to lose their friends. They didn't want to lose their homes that they had built from nothing. Some people didn't move. You know the story about what happened there. But the majority of the people moved when they got their initial papers because they didn't think that there was a way to fight it.
Our community, our barrio, was well represented in World War II. And some of our GIs, our veterans, were coming home from the wars. And at that time, they were getting the news that the people were going to be uprooted from the neighborhood. And I remember my uncle meeting with some of his war veterans in front of my grandma's house. He says, "There's a bunch of bullshit what they're trying to do to our parents and to us. Our government was good enough to take us out of our neighborhood to fight a war. We come home to what? To find out that they're going to uproot us from my neighborhood? That was a bunch of bull."
Carnal, póngase abusado, ya los tiempos han cambiado. Usted está muy agüitado y está mucho atravesado. Antes se bailaba el swing, boogie woogie jitterbug, pero esto ya torció y esto es lo.
They had a big meeting over at Legion Park with the city officials and community people. And my grandma got up, you know, and she says, "You don't have no right to," in Spanish, right? He says, "You don't have no right to buy us out or kick us out of our neighborhood. A lot of my kids, a lot of my grandchildren were raised and born here." And then she says, "Besides, you bastards, my son died for my property. Can you replace my son?" Then she started crying. That was it.
It was very sad that we had to move away because we were like a big family. And a lot of my friends were there too, my cousins. And the one that really hurt me a lot was my grandmother. We were very close with her. My father bought property out in Lincoln Heights, and she couldn't go with us because we were too many.
I remember looking at my house. I knew I wasn't going to see it again. I just looked at it once, and I refused to look at it again because I knew I was going to break down. And my mother was already all broken, and she needed somebody to be strong for her. My father built that house. I was born there. It had a vine growing, and it covered all the roof in the front. And in spring, it looked like it was wearing a white crown. So we moved away. It was gone. And you know, I've never felt about any other house the way I felt about that one.
By August 1952, Palo Verde, La Loma, and Bishop had become ghost towns. The city's acquisition of the land designated for the housing site was nearly complete. Condemnation proceedings were underway against a few property owners who still held out. It was in one of these hearings that the Elysian Park Heights housing project was dealt an unexpected blow.
We had a tremendous support for the program. Pretty well finished the engineering and the architectural work. And the only people who were opposing it were what is commonly called the real estate lobby. It was headed up by the Apartment House Owners Association and other people like that. They called it creeping socialism. They were trying to discredit it every way they could. They had petitions, they had initiatives to try to kill the program. We should have been more suspicious than we were. As I remember, it was a very large site with vacant land, but the owner of that property was a prominent business person downtown LA, and he demanded, I think, $100,000. And we were fighting with them over value. He wanted as much as he could get. When out of nowhere, this lawyer for the property owner turned to me and said, "Now, Mr. Wilkinson, I want to ask you, what organizations, political or otherwise, have you belonged to since 1931? He didn't say, "Are you a communist?" He said, "What have you belonged to?" I just turned to the judge and said, "I refuse to answer that question." Everyone, any lawyer would immediately say to the judge, "Irrelevant and immaterial." If that man had said that word, I would still be here today, and the project would have been built. But my lawyer said nothing, not a word. He's just pale white. He told me later, "Frank, if I had objected to that question, the people would have known that I, meaning he, was a communist, because I objected to that question. I said, what about me? He said, well, you have a problem too.
One of the top communist agents assigned to Operation Abolition is Frank Wilkinson, recently convicted for contempt of Congress for refusal to answer questions concerning his Communist Party membership and activities. Listen to this interview closely, because in it you will hear Frank Wilkinson, a communist agent, explain his communist jargon.
In the committee hearings today, you were called an international communist agent. Are you a communist?
Until they have resolved this matter and declared these kind of questions under compulsion to be illegal and unconstitutional, I refuse to answer the questions away from the committee, just as I refuse to answer them directly to the committee when I've been called.
I was fired. You know, I'm out, destroyed, really destroyed, neutralized is the way the FBI listed it. They successfully neutralized me. Crews of television people arrived at the courtroom, walked in to take pictures of the whole scene. Mayor Bowen was removed. He would have been a shoo-in in 1953. After this was reported to the press, the Times and other papers crusading against the mayor, Bowen was wiped out. And the new mayor, Norris Polson, came in and started the negotiations to turn the site, not back to the people, but to turn it over to Walter O'Malley and the Brooklyn Dodgers. We spent millions of dollars getting ready for it, and the Dodgers picked it up for just a fraction of that. It was just a tragedy for the people and for the city. It was the most hypocritical thing that could possibly happen. The city promising you a decent home.
For refusing to answer the questions of the House Un-American Activities Committee, Frank Wilkinson spent a year in jail. It was the beginning of Frank's own legal battle against the FBI, which had targeted Frank as part of a deliberate effort to destroy the nation's public housing programs.
Our lawsuit started in 1980, lasted 12 years. It cost Loeb and Loeb, the law firm who represented me, it cost them $1 million in pro bono money. It was an ACLU test case, and we finally won. And on winning that, we get 132,000 pages on my life from 42 to 80. And in there is the story of Chavez Ravine.
Viejo barrio, barrio viejo, solo en lugares parejos, donde un día hubo casa, donde vivió nuestra raza. Solo quedan los escombros de los hogares felices, de las alegres familias, de esa gente que yo quise. Por las tardes se sentaban afuera a tomar el fresco. Yo pasaba y saludaba, y aparece que oigo el eco. ¿Cómo está doña Juanita? Buenas tardes, Isabel. Hola, ¿qué dices, Chanita? ¿Cómo está Arturo y Manuel?
See them trees over there?
Yeah.
This hill right there, knock it down, see? And the stadium, see this hill? That's where the stadium sits. We're looking right there down at the bottom of the parking lot.
They had to lower the hill so they can have room for the stadium, see? So they lowered the hill, and that dirt covered the whole valley. The Palo Verde School, it was a grammar school. It was a two-story building. They took the roof off the school, you know, and the floors and everything, and just left the walls, and they just filled it with dirt and eventually covered it. So in 1,000 years, somebody's gonna start digging, they're gonna find a school down there.
When I saw the bulldozers moving the land, I said, you know, I'm never gonna go see a Dodger game, though I was a Dodger fan.
I went to one reunion, and they handed the Dodgers olive branches, symbolically.
I was 2 months old when the Dodgers moved to Los Angeles. Just wanted to clarify. I was 2 months old, and honestly, when we started working with the community, I didn't understand what took place 40 years ago. I didn't understand what happened in the communities here. And I think the lack of understanding on the part of the Dodgers was perceived as a lack of caring.
What kind of crap is that? We give you a fucking olive branch. It just pisses me off.
So it's a beautiful stadium. I love the Dodgers. I'm a fan of them. And I was hoping someday I would work inside the stadium as a helper, caretaker, but never made it.
What if they would succeed with a project that they want to put there? You think we would still be there? A lot of ifs and buts, you know. It says that's something that we'll never know. All we know is that we were uprooted from our neighborhood and we went our separate ways.
The really sad thing is that so many of us don't know each other. We've all gone and we've done our things, but it's like on a vacuum. It's like we lost our brothers, we lost our sisters. So there's generations of people that will never know that they did know each other.
A lot of time passed. I think it was about a dozen years. And by then, Dodger Stadium was built. I was in town working, photographing on assignment, and I thought I would go visit the old neighborhood. I was driving up these roads and I kept running into Dodger Stadium, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I thought that it must still be there if I could find the right road to get in, but I never could find the right road.